will discuss about projectile motion. So as learners, your task is to deduce the consequences of the independence of vertical and horizontal components of projectile motion. So are you ready? So projectile motion is a form of motion experienced by an object or particle. A projectile that is projected near the Earth's surface and moves along a curved path under the action of gravity only. So in particular, the effects of air resistance are assumed to be negligible. So let's take a look at the following graphical presentation of projectile motion. So what are the parts of projectile motion? So let's hear about it from teacher Loresa.
Now, let's label the parts of a certain projectile motion. So let's look at this graphical representation and let's label the different parts. Okay? So what do you think is this one? This point here, what do you think is it? So we call it maximum height. Okay? Next, how about this one? The trajectory of a certain projectile. So we call it parabolic trajectory. Okay? And how about this one? What is this one? Yes, you got it right. The answer is range. So now you have the different parts of a certain projectile motion, and now we proceed to the different factors that affect projectile motion. Now let's have a simulation of projectile motion. So we have here physics education for teachers lab for the simulation of projectile. So what are the factors that affect projectile? So for example, I will launch here a certain object, let's say a pumpkin, and we will launch it at a certain angle. So we would vary first the angle of the projectile. So what is the effect of the angle in launching a certain projectile? So you observe, okay? So I will have, let's say, 30 degrees of launching angle, and I have an initial speed of 18 meters per second. So this is the range of the pumpkin. Now, if I launch it at 45 degrees, what would happen to projectile motion? So if you look at this has a greater distance, but this time it has a higher height. Now, if I launch it at 60 degrees, at 60 degrees, will the projectile be farther? What do you think? So, simulation is neglecting air resistance. So what happened if you look at it, if you launch at 60 degrees, the range they have the same range with the 30-degree angle, but the height is only different, but it has the same range. If I launch it at, let's say, 75 degrees, what will happen again? So if you look at the projectile, it has a greater height again, but look at the range. It has a lesser range. And obviously, if you launch your projectile at 90 degrees, it would only go back to you. So that is what we call projectile motion. So what happened here? So if you look at this one, the farthest range would be achieved if the angle is 45 degrees. So that is for projectile. How about the speed of the projectile? For example, since we have a launching angle at 45 degrees, which has the maximum range, so if I launch the projectile at 45 degrees, and let's say I have a speed of 5 meters per second, I repeat, so that is just the range of the projectile. So if I launch it at 10 meters per second, then that would be the speed of the projectile. So let's have it at 15 meters per second, then the range would be farther. So what is the implication of the initial speed with the projectile motion? Projectile motion is constant along the x direction. So the initial speed is important. So speed is a factor of projectile motion. Now, let's look at the factor of mass. What do you think will happen? Okay, so look at this one. I use cannonball at 45 degrees. Okay, this is the launching of the projectile. And then I use tank shell. Okay, it has the same range. It has the same height. If I launch a baseball, so it has the same range. We have football. I would launch a football. Do you see the football? So what else? We have the pumpkin. I would launch it. So that's it. I would launch a piano, which is more massive than human, of course. So it has the same range and it has the same height. And I would launch a car. So it has the same range and it has the same height. So what does it mean in projectile motion? So for projectile motion, mass is not a factor that affects projectile motion. Sabi ni Galileo, regardless of the mass, all objects would fall at the same time. So this is regarding free fall. So this is the simulation for projectile motion.
Now, as a conclusion from the simulation, yes, so these are initial velocity, angle of launch, and height. So take note, mass is not a factor that affects projectile motion.
Okay, so now let's proceed to answering the crossword puzzle regarding projectile motion. Okay, so let's first answer the across questions. So what do you think is constant at the vertical direction? So what do you think is the answer? Yes, you guessed it right. So the answer is acceleration. Number 5. This is constant along the x-axis. It is initial blank. What do you think is the blank? It is initial velocity. So did you guess it right? I hope so. Next, number 7. This is the term for the distance traversed by the object in a projectile motion. So what do you think is the answer? Yes, you guessed it right again. The answer is range. Number 10. Even if you vary this, it does not affect projectile motion. So what do you think is the answer? Yes, the answer is mass. Number 2. We proceed to the downward questions. Number 2. What happens to the object when thrown upward? Take note, when an object goes up, it slows down. So what is that term? Yes, you guessed it right again. So the object decelerates. Okay, so that is the answer. Next, number 3. It is a combination of the x and y motion. So what do you think is the answer? Yes, you guessed it right. It is what we call projectile motion. Next, number 4. What do you call the path of the trajectory of a certain projectile? What is the behavior of the path of the trajectory of a certain projectile? So what do you think is the answer? Yes, the answer is parabolic. Number 6. During free fall, the only factor that acts on the object is the acceleration due to blank. So what is that blank? What do you think is the answer? Yes, you guessed it right. The answer is it's acceleration due to gravity. Number 8. What is the relationship of the total time of flight to the time at maximum height? So what do you think is the relationship? Okay, so it starts with letter T. What do you think is the answer? Yes, you guessed it. So the answer is twice. And number 9, what do you think is the velocity of a certain projectile when it reaches its maximum height? What is the value of its magnitude? Very good. So the answer is 0. Now you have completed the crossword puzzle. Congratulations!
So I hope you learned something from us. See you in our next physics episode. So always remember, enjoy learning and keep safe always. Bye!